What's up, everybody? Garrett back here, and I want to do something pretty cool today. It's October. Everybody's doing their Halloween watch list. What are they watching around Halloween? I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to take it from a different angle. I'm going to tell you not what I'm watching around Halloween, but I want to tell you 13 movies that I think you should add to your watch list. All right, so what I did here was I picked 13 movies that I really like that I feel are really underrated or overlooked. This is from any decade, so we've got things from the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. I mean, we have more modern movies, but just movies that I really enjoy that I just feel like never get talked about. I don't want to say much more. I'm going to tell you a little bit about each movie, and hopefully by the end of this, there'll be some that you've never seen and you can track down. All right, the first one is a 1989 flick, and this is a movie called Night Visitor. I've actually talked about this on my channel before. This is extremely underrated, overlooked. Not many people know about this, and to be quite honest, I didn't know about this until a couple years ago when I found this Blu-ray. This was put out by Scorpion, and I had never heard of this movie, but when I saw this image, I was like, whoa, what is this? This is pretty cool. And I was reading a little bit on it online, and people compared it to Fright Night. And man, I'm such a huge Fright Night fan. It's one of my all-time favorite horror movies, so I was like, you know what? I need to check this thing out. And man, I'm so glad I did. It's basically a similar premise. It's about a kid, a high school kid. He's played by Derek Rydell. You've seen him in a couple things around this time. And he gets a new neighbor, actually played by Shannon Tweed, believe it or not. And there's murders going on around his neighborhood, around his town. And come to find out, he suspects his teacher of being the killer. I highly recommend searching this thing out. See if you can find this edition. I just found this really cool, and it was refreshing to kind of get an 80s movie that had kind of passed me by for a long time. And since then, I've went back and I bought the one sheet and I bought the VHS. I mean, I really got into this Night Visitor. Let me know if you guys have seen this one, because it's definitely one you need to add to your watch list. All right, the next one I want to talk about is 1987's The Caller. This was a beautiful edition put out by Vinegar Syndrome. This is one of those movies that I think not many people have seen, but the ones who have really dig it. This was a blind buy for me. With Vinegar Syndrome, to me, it's always 50-50. I'm 50% not going to like it, or 50% going to find a hidden gem that I've never seen before. And I'm so thankful I grabbed this one, and man, I absolutely loved it. It is another one that kind of passed me by through all the years. It was in 1987 this was made, so I don't know how it took me so long to find this movie. It doesn't seem like a lot of people have seen this one, but it's really, really cool, and I'm surprised not many people talk about it. It's basically about Malcolm McDowell's character getting a flat tire and showing up at a woman's house who's home alone in the woods, asks to use her phone, and then things just really start to unravel with both these characters, and it's really interesting. It's really like almost like a thriller, but there is a lot of horror elements in this, and man, it's got one of the coolest end scenes I've ever seen. And man, The Caller is one that's going to keep you on the edge of your seat, and this is probably still available from Vinegar Syndrome. Hop on it. I tell people all the time, do not let this one pass you by. It's The Caller from 1987. All right, I'm going to bring this to 1998. This is one that I rented at the video store. Man, this really shook me. This is a real cool movie. It's Dee Snider's Strangeland, and I'm sure a lot of you have probably heard about this one, or maybe not, because it's kind of still stuck on physical media on VHS and only on DVD. It hasn't really gotten an upgrade since, but I would love to see this thing get some good treatment by maybe like a Scream Factory or something like that. But Strangeland is a real cool movie. Dee Snider's the main character, and he's basically like this psycho serial killer that goes to rehab, and he becomes a changed man, and then he's back out on the streets, and it's really, really interesting story. It's different, and if you like things like Saw and Silence of the Lambs, like, I feel like you'd probably dig Strangeland. It kind of, to me, inspired things like Saw and a lot of those movies, but it took a lot from movies such as Silence of the Lambs. So Strangeland is one I would definitely hunt down. I'm sure it's probably streaming. Like I said, as of right now, DVD and VHS is the only way to get this on physical media, but I highly recommend this one, Strangeland. If you haven't seen it, check it out. All right, the next one is 1987's Death Spa, which is a real cool movie. You know me, I'm a huge fitness nut. And you take fitness and you take horror and you add it together, and I absolutely love that. I was even thinking about doing a video on like top 5 fitness horror movies, but Death Spa is one that would probably make the top of that list. It's fun, it's cheesy, it's super 80s, and man, I love it. This is a Blu-ray that came out from Gorgon Video a while back. I'm not sure if this is still available. I would love to see maybe a 4K of this come out, but Death Spa is a really cool movie that if you love fitness or you love 80s cheesy horror, this is definitely one that needs to go on the top of your list. All right, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change things up. I'm going to bring this more modern. This came out in 2014, and this was a movie that I saw in the theaters with a friend. And I really liked this movie, and it never got any fanfare at all, no hype around it, and I still think this is a pretty overlooked movie. It was produced by James Wan, but it's one that just people seem to have forgot about. I found this pretty creepy, pretty cool, and that is Lights Out. Let me know if anybody's checked this thing out. Like I said, 2014, I don't think it did well in the theaters, but Lights Out always, to me, was pretty damn cool. I mean, I like the aesthetic of it. I'm a huge Teresa Palmer fan, so maybe that's why I really like this movie a lot, but I think the aesthetic and the story is pretty neat, and it's pretty damn creepy. So Lights Out is one I'm sure everybody can get a hold of, but if you haven't seen this and maybe you just overlooked it, because again, it's not one that was really ever hyped or talked about, I would go back and check this thing out, and what a great time to do it, because I think you'll enjoy it. All right, here's another really, really cool movie from 1980. We're bringing it way back, and it's Fade to Black, another Vinegar Syndrome release. Look at how beautiful this looks. It's so cool that this thing got that big treatment from Vinegar Syndrome. This thing looks fantastic. Such great poster art. I had this movie from Anchor Bay on DVD, and I absolutely loved it. Check the back out here, too. Such a cool images here, but basically this movie is about a cinephile, kind of like a dorky, shy guy, and he just loves movies so much, and basically he starts becoming a lot of these characters and goes a little bit on a killing spree. So very, very cool. You can kind of see how he brings these characters to life, and it's just a really interesting and fun movie that I think you guys are going to like. It's even got a young Mickey Rourke in here as well, but check on your streaming and see if you can locate Fade to Black, because I just feel like this fits right in with spooky season. All right, so this is probably the most recent movie that I'm bringing to the table. This came out in 2023, and I recently just kind of watched this. I heard some good things about it, but not many people had talked about it. I never saw this advertised, except for a couple people who reached out to me and said, hey, you should check it out. It's pretty cool. And I did, and that's a movie called Cobweb. This was put out by Lionsgate. I mean, this was something that really took me by surprise. It was creepy. It was about a kid that has these overprotective parents, and basically there's like a murder in town, so this kid has overbearing parents and they don't want him going out trick-or-treating, so he spends the night in his room. He's always kind of getting in trouble, and he starts hearing some tapping and stuff on the wall, and the story starts to unravel. We find a little bit more about what's going on in this house, and man, this thing had me on the edge of my seat. Like I said, I think this was pretty cool. It's in one vein something you feel like you've seen before with some modern horror movies, but it took a little bit of a twist, and I think it really made this thing special, and it's one I think more people are going to start to talk about once they see it. So let's check out Cobweb from 2023. If you want a more modern movie for your list this year, this is one I think you should check out if you've never seen it. All right, the next one is one that came out in 2000s, and I recently just got this 4K from Synapse Films, and that is The Convent. Now, this is an interesting one to talk about because I had this on DVD a long time ago, and I watched it once, and I kind of just forgot about it, and I was like, that was all right, and I never watched it again, but recently they came out this 4K, and I said, you know what, I'm going to check this out again because the DVD quality was not that great, so I popped this thing in, and man, I like this one a lot. I thought to myself, wow, you've really changed your mind on this thing. This actually was fun, and it reminds me a lot of Night of the Demons. It's about these kids that go to this convent, and there's like these possessed nuns. I mean, it's very similar in a way to Night of the Demons, but it's a cool cast. I mean, you got Adrienne Barbeau in here, but it was made in the 2000s, so it's almost taken like Night of the Demons and adding something like Resident Evil or something to it, where things just get a little bit more bonkers. But I did think this was fun, and I was very surprised with this. And to be honest, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this list today, was to kind of talk about this and be like, wow, I totally changed my mind on this thing, and this is one movie I'd recommend. And like I said, it just came out on 4K, so check it out. Check out The Convent from Synapse Films. This is kind of one that I feel like is slept on. It's from 2000, but it really does feel like it was made in like the early 90s. So check it out, and this is the new 4K from Synapse Films. Okay, the next one is from 2009, so we're bringing it back a little bit more modern. And this was a movie that I did a whole video talking about. I talked a little more in depth about it, the history of it, being a horror fan around that time in 2009, and what I thought about this movie. And man, I still go on record to say, if you're a fan of Terrifier and that whole franchise that's kind of taken over the horror genre, I think you need to go back in time and check out a movie called Laid to Rest. This was one that I feel like at the time was getting a lot of hype. They had a sequel called Chrome Skull, but it seems like since then, there was never a third one, and this kind of just started to die out, and nobody ever talks about this anymore. But it was really hyped up when it came out in 2009, and if you've never seen this, I highly recommend checking it out, especially if you're fans of like that slasher stuff with heavy gore. This was very unique, and I think ahead of its time in 2009. It's about this slasher character named Chrome Skull. He's got a little video camera on his shoulder. He's got this really gnarly knife you can see in the front here, and he's got this chrome skeleton mask with like almost like a business suit. It's pretty unique, and if you're into those gory slashers, things like a Terrifier, check out what they were doing in 2009, and that is Laid to Rest. All right, the next one is from 1988, and it's one that I've talked heavily about on this channel, and that is Black Roses. 1988, almost like a heavy metal horror movie. It's my all-time favorite heavy metal horror movie. People think about Halloween, they think about the Trick or Treat heavy metal horror movie, which is an amazing movie, but to me, Black Roses is my jam. It's a little bit more cheesy, I think, than Trick or Treat, and that's why I love it. The effects are practical. They're silly, but they are gnarly as hell. And it's about this band called Black Roses that move into this town to go on tour called Mill Basin. And they're on tour, and they're really the biggest rock band at the time. So the kids in this small little town are super excited to see them. And the teachers are not really excited because they think that they're going to brainwash these kids into doing bad things because, you know, heavy metal music is not cool, and, you know, they worship the devil, and the parents go to check them out and they see that they're harmless. But then when the parents leave, all hell kind of breaks loose here. So this is one that does not get enough love as something like a Trick or Treat does. This is still stuck on DVD. That's Black Roses. But Joe Bob on Shudder did a special on Black Roses. So if you wanted to check it out on a streaming, it is on Shudder if you don't want to buy this DVD. But I do think this DVD is still accessible. It does have an overseas Blu-ray release, but I'm hopeful that someone's going to put it out here, especially someone like Synapse who put out this DVD from back in the day. But if you like heavy metal and you like horror, I think Black Roses is the one you should check out. All right, we're going to bring one from the 70s into the mix. This one is a very hard one for me to explain. It's about a little girl, and this thing just feels like a dream. If you checked out my last video talking about the creepiest made-for-kids movies of the 80s, I talk about a movie called Peanut Butter Solution, where I felt like it was just some kind of crazy dream put to film. This is the same thing. It's very dreamlike. And this is called Lamora, A Child's Tale of the Supernatural. This was another movie put out by Synapse Films, and it's still stuck on DVD to this day. This thing is, man, a fever dream. I mean, I don't know what to say about this. It's about a little girl, and she goes to visit her dying father, and all of a sudden it kind of feels like she's in like this dream sequence. I mean, the lighting in this is incredible. It's very neon, very dreamlike. You see things like vampires kind of rear their ugly head, but I'm going to take a look at the back of this box, and I'm going to read this to you because, again, it's a very hard one for me to explain because it just feels like it says a supernatural children's tale. But man, this is freaky. It's eerie. It's got a real cool tone to it, and I highly recommend it. But it says here, a notorious bank robber kills his wife and flees the police, only to be captured by a mysterious group of figures in an abandoned town. His beautiful daughter, Lila Lee, receives a letter stating that her father is near death and needs her to see him. Sneaking away at night from her minister guardian, Lila embarks on a terrifying journey to find her father that leads to a mansion run by Lamora, a seemingly loving woman who cares for a group of gypsy children and witch-like servant. Once the terrifying secret of Lamora is revealed, Lila must uncover what happened to her father and fight for dear life as she tries to escape the clutches of the undead. This is one of those movies that not a lot of people have seen it, but the ones who have really dig this one a lot. And I think this is one that most people are going to like, especially around this time of year. It's just super cool. It's different. It's kind of slow paced, but I like that when it comes to specific horror movies. But I wanted to add this to the list because, again, I feel like no one ever brings this thing up. It's Lamora, A Child's Tale of a Supernatural. Okay, we're almost done. We've got 2 left. This one is Hacko Lantern. You want to watch something around this time of year, the spooky season, you want to check out Hacko Lantern. It's one that not many people talk about. This is a pretty cool custom art, but check out this artwork here. This is the artwork. That's really, really rad. This was put out by Massacre Video, and to be honest, there is a 4K on the way, so if anybody has never seen Hacko Lantern, this is a very old out-of-print Blu-ray, but they did announce a 4K for anybody who's interested in this, maybe after you check out this movie, or if it's one that you actually really love. But it's cheesy, it's fun, it's 80s, and it's about an old grandfather who's the leader of a satanic cult. And what they do is they sacrifice on Halloween. So like I said, it does take place around Halloween. It's a super cool movie. Again, it's different. I like these kind of cheesy movies that have to do with like cults and stuff like that. But that is Hacko Lantern that you should try to find and check out for this spooky season. All right, now the last one I want to talk about might be one of the most bonkers horror movies I've ever seen in my life. I wanted to do a standalone video on this, and maybe I will someday, going a little bit deeper into it. But man, this thing is twisted. This thing is off the walls, and it is a movie called Butcher Baker, Nightmare Maker. Now, the slipcover is probably not anything you've seen before. This is new artwork from Severin Films. They just put this out on 4K, but this might be the image that you're used to seeing, is this one here. Butcher Baker, Nightmare Maker, also known as Night Warning, and it's had another cover similar to this. But yeah, this is the new 4K from Severin Films, and man, this thing is crazy. It's about a kid who loses his parents, and he gets brought up by his aunt, and his aunt is very overbearing, and she loves him so much that she doesn't want anybody to take him away. So she's very controlling, and you know, a lot goes on in this movie where he's trying to cover for her and just comes to find out that his aunt isn't everything that she may seem. Great performances in this movie. The woman who plays his aunt, Susan Terrell, I mean, she absolutely kills it in this movie. This thing is wacky, it's wild, it's off the walls. Find it. I don't know if it's on streaming, but you need to search for Butcher Baker, Nightmare Maker. With a title like that, this thing has to be off the walls crazy. Now, guys, that was 13 movies that I think you should add to your watch list this year, and especially if you've never seen them before, or maybe you're like, you know what, I haven't seen that in a long time. I will rewatch that again based on Garrett's recommendation. And based on all 13 of these, I want you to leave me a comment down below and say, I've seen this one, I like it, I dislike it, I've never seen this one, I'm going to check it out. Those are the things I want to know down in the comments below, because I'm really curious to see, are these overlooked movies? Because in my opinion, I feel like they are. And what I like about this series, before everybody jumps in the comments and said, what about this, what about this, what about this, is I'm going to do multiple parts of this series if you guys like this stuff. I've got so many movies to talk about, so many horror movies that I think are underrated horror movies that I want to recommend to you guys. So if this is the type of thing you like, let's start with this one as part 1 of the 13 most overlooked horror movies that you can add to your watch list. All right, everyone, thank you for checking this out. This is Garrett at Born2beRad, and like always, stay rad.